Oscar, this one's for you. The beat is fire and I'm ready to go, because it's time for the Basco scenario. Some people like flair, some people like flash, but if it ain't hot, some people call it trash. I call him vanilla chocolate. He just like money, fits well in my pocket. Watch it now, or watch it later. His name so fly, it means liberator. Sit back, relax, and watch the show. Gascar, get ready, man. It's time to go. Peace. Basco scenario coming to you each and every week. Peace.
Is there any stuff? Hey, what's going on, mi gente? That's right. Another episode of the Basco scenario coming at you with, something that I've had on my mind for a while now. This whole Latino, Hispano, people causing, not arguments, but heated debates about who's who and what's what, who's Latino, who's Hispanic, who should win an Academy award for Latino music, and who's not Latino, and why should they win and why should they not win. So this subject kind of hits close to home because I grew up in a very multicultural area in Montreal. My parents, we lived and owned in an apartment complex, which a lot of our tenants were Latino, Spanish speaking, from various different countries in South America, Central America, Mexico, Caribbean as well. And we never, my parents being from the northern region of Spain, which is the Basque region, we never thought of them as any less than us, because we were always open that people that speak Spanish are Hispanic, no matter from what reaches of the world you are. The language is Spanish. And I just, it's something that I really wanted to look into. I got a couple of articles here, and I was wondering and curious to see what was going to happen. So this is pretty much like a personal opinion, right? What do you consider yourself, Latino or Hispano, or both? Because they're both fine. And now, these words create division. And that's the part I have issues with, because like I said, it kind of hits close to home because I'm Canadian born. My parents are from Spain, northern part of Spain, which is Basque, which is not even, some of them don't even consider themselves Spanish. They consider themselves Basque. And myself growing up in Montreal, I had kind of like an identity crisis where I didn't know what I was, because at home we spoke Spanish. My father never learned Euskera, which is the Basque language. And so there was a disconnect of our, ancestry there. But all the dishes and foods that we ate were from the mainland in northern Spain, typical Spanish, northern Spanish, Basque meals. But all my tenants and stuff like that, and friends that I grew up with that were Spanish speaking, they were from a bunch of different countries, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, El Salvadorian, Mexican, and for me, everybody was an equal. There was no, there was no division of it. I didn't think of them any less because of where they came from. And unfortunately, that's not the mentality that a lot of people have. Let me see here. I'm just going to get to the chat, see what's going on. Eli, primero en el chat. Sí, señor. Fuiste el primero. Need to run to the store. Ahora vas a ser el último, man. And El Capitan, my brother-in-law, also, he's from El Salvador. Homes of the Popusa, which my wife loves. Speaking of which, I married a Chilean woman. She was born in Chile, immigrated to Canada when she was 4 years old with her mom. And both my kids, identity crisis. What are they? Are they Spanish, or are they Latino, or Latinas, or don't? I'm not going to accept Latinx, because that for me is just, having to adjust to people being sensitive in genders. I mean, honestly, if you are born with a penis, you are a male. If you're born with a vagina, you are a female. So in that case, Latino or Latina, or Hispano or Hispana, or just Hispano hablante, in my opinion. So what's the difference, Latino or Hispanic? Well, I got an article that we're going to take a look, dab into that, and see what, the Britannica has to say about what's the difference between them both. Don't panic, we're only Hispanic. Así es la cosa. So let me just share my screen here to see this article. So here we go. What's the difference between Hispanic and Latino? Latin America extended from the deserts of North Mexico to the icy wilds of Tierra del Fuego in Chile and Argentina. Encompasses many diverse countries and peoples, though most of these countries are largely Catholic and Spanish speaking, thanks to a shared history of colonization by Spain. Wow. Thanks to shared history of colonization. I don't know who's really thankful about the colonization part, but yeah, okay. Due to the history, they have at least many differences as they do similarities with each other. In the United States, the terms Hispanic and Latino or Latina for women, sometimes I'm not saying that, were adopted in an attempt to loosely group immigrants and their descendants who hail from this part of the world. The terms are often used interchangeably through the words can convey slightly different connotations. It is important to clarify that the categories refer only to a person's origin and ancestry. A Latino, Latina, or Hispanic person can be any race or color. And there you have it. Right there, you have governments that are actually putting on these labels. Right? That's where these labels derive from. It's from government and high officials that creating division. Jan Gamers, hey, hola, man. Basco Talk. Exactly, Basco Talk. I haven't done one of these, and this is a topic that, like I said, man, hits close to home, and I really makes me feel upset, but rage, because it pins Spanish-speaking people against each other at times, and it's all because of government putting these terms on censuses and stuff like that. So it's really, really interesting to see. So in general, Latino is understood as a shorthand for the Spanish word Latinoamericano, or the Portuguese Latinoamericano, which is kind of the same thing, and refers to almost anyone born in with ancestors from Latin America and living in the US, including Brazilians. Latino does not include speakers of the Romance languages from Europe, such as Italians or Spaniards. And some people have continuously argued that it excludes Spanish speakers from the Caribbean, although people from French Guiana are sometimes accepted as Latino, since French share linguistic roots with Spanish and Portuguese. There is much debate about whether people from English-speaking Belize and Guyana and Dutch-speaking Suriname truly fit under the category, since their cultures and histories are so distinct. So that's kind of not quite true in a sense, because Latinos is actually, it was a person that gave that derives, actually was the French. Latino was actually started up in 1946 by Juan Francisco Martinez. He wrote that it derived from the French that started categorizing French Latin America, so Amérique Latine. And Hispano derives from Latin Hispanicius, which is partially Greek and Spanish, which categorized Spanish speaking in the Iberic Peninsula. So again, division, geographic divisioning, and divisioning amongst the people themselves. As a Dominican Mexican American, I consider myself Hispanic. Well, that's cool. I completely agree with whatever you want to consider yourself, as long as people accept it and don't separate you from the rest, because we're all Hispanic and we're all Latino. But it's all about how you see the definition of Latino. That's what this whole stream is about. It's how you see the definition of the words, which is kind of sad because I hate division. I really do. Hispanic is generally accepted as a narrow term that includes people only from Spanish-speaking Latin America. Latin America. Only Spanish-speaking. But yet, they include Brazil, which is not Spanish-speaking. It's Portuguese-speaking. But they're all deriving from the Latin language. In that case, that would make sense why they include the French Caribbean, right? Going back to what was further up in this article, or in this article. Oh my goodness. So with this understanding, a Brazilian could be Latino and non-Hispanic. A Spaniard could be Hispanic and not Latino. And a Colombian could use both terms. However, this is also imperfect categorization. Thank you. As there are many indigenous peoples from Spanish-speaking countries who do not identify with the Spanish culture and do not speak the dominant language. Absolutely true. As we know, there's a lot of indigenous in Mexico. There's a lot of indigenous in Chile, Argentina, Peru. They have absolutely no connection to the colonizers that were there at the time. So to simplify, or perhaps further confuse, absolutely confuse, yes, matters, the 2010, there you go, government, again, census, what I mentioned earlier. The 2010 U.S. Census listed both terms together and specifically mentioned the Spanish-speaking countries, territories of the Caribbean by vaguely excluding non-Spanish-speaking countries. Many Brazilians, for example, were unsure whether to check the box. In day-to-day life, many Latin American immigrants and descendants simply prefer to state their countries of origin directly. And I agree, because that makes things a lot simpler. So, no, that's not it. So there you go. Was that the whole article? Yeah, I believe so. So yeah, man, it's something that definitely, governments put in census and create divisions to better control who they have in their populace, which is fine. Numbers, descendants, like where were you born? A majority of Latin American, Latino, or Hispanos are born in the United States, and they are American. Same thing goes for here in Canada. A lot of us that, our parents immigrated here, we are Canadian. Now, myself, like I said, I have an identity crisis because I don't really consider myself Spanish. I consider myself Canadian of Basque heritage. And it took me a while to come to terms with that, because I don't really practice anything. Like, I go back to my childhood, I didn't practice any Spanish folklore, like flamenco dancing or anything like that. But, we spoke Spanish at home. It was religious. My mother was like, strict rule, we don't speak anything but Spanish. And because of that, Soy capaz de hablar español perfectamente. And that is really the importance, culture and stuff is preserved in the house. And it's our responsibility as parents to pass that on to our children. And, we do fail at times of doing that, but it's our responsibility. Do you think Hispanic music any represents the culture as well? Absolutely. Especially, folklore Spanish music. It's different from it's different in every country. Folklore Chilean music and folklore Argentinian music, it's completely different because you get elements of Spanish, from the time of the colonization, and you have also the indigenous mix to it, which is beautiful, man. It is. Even Mexico has that touch. I think the food represents the culture well, 100%. You have empanadas that are made differently and taste differently, but every single country, Hispanic country or Latino country, whichever one you feel comfortable with saying, which is completely fine. And that's the point I'm trying to say. It's completely fine what you consider yourself. It's when the government starts to make matters confusing when they're putting these things in censuses that Latin people don't know what the hell to check off. The food, absolutely, man. Chilean empanada is different from a Venezuelan one, and vice versa. And pupusas are pupusas. You got the copyright on that. So, the problematic history of the word Hispanic. So people also opt for Latinx heritage, not Latinx, Latin Hispanic heritage month. I think that's the right. I guess that's the right way to label heritage month. But what I noticed, and I was on a stream, well, in the chat for a stream for Bird of Prey 5, and he was going through a site that had all the monthly, holidays or whatever, acknowledgement to, gay pride, Polish heritage month. And the Hispanic heritage month was from September 15th to October 15th. And he went off on a rant because of that, because it wasn't it's a month numerically, but it's not a specific month. What's up, LDG? And it was going off on it. And I wrote in the chats because Hispanics are usually late. That's what I wrote. And it's true. And and that's part of the, call it a stereotype or whatever, but we all know if we're Hispanic, when we invite certain family members that come from certain countries, we tell them straight off the bat, the party's going to be at 5. We tell them it's at 3:00 because we know they're going to be 2 hours late to that party. All right, so Hispanic is misguided blanket term when you consider the complex identities within the Latin community. I'm not saying Latinx because I don't agree with that shit. The Oxford Dictionary defines the term as relating to Spain or to Spanish-speaking countries, especially those of Central and South America. So, Central and South America. And if you looked at the previous article we read, it at least told us that it was a confusing way to try to label ourselves, right? Because it is. So Hispanic translate to Hispano, a person descending from Spanish settlers in the Southwest. I can still hear me. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we go. Okay. Connectivity problems. I don't know why. I'm the only one in the house today. So Given the definition like this, it might not be surprising that the United States government, here we go again, the government, has unequivocally lumped all Latin people under the Hispanic umbrella, whether it applies to us or not, which is why celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month can sometimes leave us indifferent. Well, it's supposed to celebrate our culture, it also excluding so many others. Its meaning is simply spread too thin. Hispanic isn't being used as much as it once was, at least not by the new generation of Latin people, despite the continuing effort by the government to force the term down our throat. Many Latin people can picture the tiny box on any federal or state form. Our only option to categorize ourselves to embrace our identity is to check off Hispanic. The same goes for college forms, job applications, and much more. National Hispanic Heritage Month, which was signed into law by President Ronald Reagan in 1988, isn't helping matters either. Like, what do you guys think? I guess we're usually late. They say black people are always late as well. It depends from which country they derive from, buddy. Who a Hispanic rapper, singer who represents the culture? Who is an Hispanic? Well, right now making major moves from Spain that is making a nice cultural blend. I would say Rosalia, because she takes gypsy music and even sings in Catalan. So that is cultural right there, right? Catalan is another Latin derived language that is in Catalonia, Spain, which is where Barcelona is and stuff like that. So I would say her and from Spain now over and Puerto Rico, and you have whatever reggaetoneros that are going out right now, they're all helping the language cause. And that's my point. No matter where they're from, the Spanish music is tearing it up. Be it reggaeton, be it baladas, it is tearing it up. Merengue, it's out there, man. I remember in the late 2000s when Spanish music was starting to crack it here in Canada, in the United States. It's different because you have a lot of Spanish communities over there, like Miami, man. Miami is basically a Spanish state, Texas as well, California. It's all crazy. Yeah, Bad Bunny, baby. Yeah, exactly, Bad Bunny. And his story too is quite cool. I can't stand Cardi B, man. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. Give the girl, she did what she did, but this girl freaking drugged people, man. And people are praising her for that without any repercussion whatsoever. So I can't, man. I can't. So the history of Hispanic is intimately tied to the U.S. government and the way the government attempted to identify it, which is not truly true, because Hispano has been in the Spanish vocabulary in Spain, Hispanohablante. It's been around for a while, but the government in the United States is using it now to generalize all Spanish-speaking people. And like they said before, Latinos, they used to include Brazilians. And the other article, the Brazilian that had to check off a box, they didn't know which one to check off because they don't speak Spanish. They speak Portuguese. But it's still a Latino America country. So according to Pew, it wasn't until 1970 that the Census Bureau asked people living in the U.S. if they were either Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Central or South American, or other Spanish, or no, none of these. So if you were Brazilian, you would pick South America. Okay. But the results of the question, according to Pew, gave way to a bigger problem that is laughable and ironic. People in the U.S. were reporting themselves as being from Central America and South America because they thought the answers meant that South or Central regions of the United States. And is where the American education system has failed its citizens. If you don't know basic fucking geography, there's something wrong with your schools. Do you know how to speak Portuguese? Falo português pouco, porque la amiga, like, it's like, Portuguese is drunk Spanish. So I'll drink a bottle of wine, man, and I'll be fucking fluent in Portuguese. Pero si falo pouco. Falo pouco para brincar com meu amigo Paulo, who I grew up with. So yeah, I understand it. I speak a little bit, a couple of words here and there. I can keep a conversation going. I just have to slur my Spanish. Okay. But the results of the questions, according to people, give bigger problems to people. And that, I think I read that. Okay, so 1975, Grace Flores Hughes was a 26-year-old Latina. See, no Latin X shit. Latina working for the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in the D.C. The Washington Post reported that she and a diverse group of federal employees came together to convene as part of the ad hoc committee on racial and ethnic definitions, aside from figuring out what to call the Latinx community. How about Hispanic? How about leaving the shit how it was and creating these terms that just create division and putting them on documents, which creates division? Hispanic was better than anything I had been called as a kid, Flores Hughes says, who currently sits on the National Hispanic Advisory Council for Trump. Okay, so this is an old article. The Washington Post 2003, as a kid, she said she was often called wetback and a dirty Mexican. The several Latinx members of committee did not agree with using the word Hispanic and wanted to go with Latino instead. Now, see, the abuse that this person was getting as a kid, my kids get that today. And they're not even Mexican. Like, my daughter the other day was just telling us this today, that she was in the street talking with one of her friends. Her friends wanted to know, how do you say, certain words in Spanish? And she started saying it, and the person says to her, why don't you go back to your country eating a taco? It sucks. That's the world we live in. Where do we got here? Back to the chat. I go to Spanish class. I say they teach it well. It's good, man. You know what? Any language you can learn it. If it's offered to you, learn it, because all it does is open doors and opens opportunities for you. Latinx shit is annoying. Absolutely, it is. You're the best, bro. Represent 100%, man. I represent everybody. Even like I said, I grew up in a very multicultural. My first friends were Black, Jamaican, from Trinidad. As I grew older and I started branching out, I had Asian friends from China, Vietnam, Laos. Total respect to all those people, all those cultures. My next door building owner was from Laos. They used to make crazy cookouts. No, they didn't cook dog or anything like that. So, and we used to share, man. We used to share. That's what it was about. And that's one thing, going back to what I said previously about having a building with tenants and living in that building as well, from all different places. When we used to make a barbecue, man, it was like the best ever, man. And right now I have goosebumps because it was an amazing part of me growing up, because we had people from every parts of the world coming and sharing with us. My father built a freaking barbecue table that was able to sit at least 40 to 50 people, because of these barbecues that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we had like Filipino people that lived in the buildings too that would come down, and share with us as well. The Philippines, another country that was colonized by Spain, and not only that, a lot of my ancestors, Basque descendants that were there before the Spanish, you know, a lot of them have the same last name as I do, which is crazy. Hey, Jess Basco, that's right. Thank you for stopping in. So there were never any consensus in the group to the very end. Avina Nuba Rios. Avin Novoa Rios, who was also on the committee, told the Post in 2000. We came out with the argument, but there was some bad feelings. I know two people who didn't speak for up to a year after it was over. So again, you see, even them putting these terms together, how to categorize Spanish immigrants into the United States as Latino or Hispanos, those terms are divisive within the Hispanic Latino community, because there's people that feel strongly about the colonizers because they were raised more in an indigenous way, or whatever stories that they grew up with, right? That's the stigma of it. You know, right away, if you say you're a Spaniard to a Latino from the South American stuff, for example, I had, growing up one day, we had Jehovah's Witnesses come to our door, and they knocked on the door, and my father answered, and we were at the door, and they spoke Spanish, and my father says, "Listen, I'm not interested, through respect." And then the person, which was from, I believe they were from El Salvador, started saying, "Oh," because my father has, Spanish Castilian, Spanish from Spain accent, and he's like, "Oh, you're from Spain?" And my father's like, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Oh, you're colonizers. Your ancestors slaughtered and raped thousands and thousands of people." And my father just looked at him and said, "Well, not my ancestors really, because I'm from Basque descendant." And my father goes to the Jehovah's Witness and says, "What's your last name?" And he goes, "Oh, my last name's Hernandez." And he goes, "That doesn't sound very indigenous." I'm like, "So it's your ancestors that did that to your own people. So I would think before you open your mouth the next time." And I looked at my dad, I looked at the Jehovah's Witness, and I was like, damn, that is fucking facts, right? And it's true. The largest freaking criminals of man's history is the Catholic Church. What they did with colonization, 100%. So the word Hispanic has bagging given its history, but what makes being labeled Hispanic worse is the negative connotations and the racist undertones. Growing up, I despised being labeled Hispanic. It made me feel as if my Mexican and indigenous side, wow, we're just talking about that, this is how it was being wiped out. Hispanic has function and power to whiten people. Wow. Even though in practice, in their daily life, people might not be read as white or being identified themselves as white in the particular way, Price says, explaining how the term can miss the nuance of the identity like Afro-Latinx by grouping it in with white Latinx people. So it erases people's mixed heritage, their families, their stories by making people identify with the whiteness of Spain. Damn. And the virtues of that particular term. And like I said, it's all about how you interpret these words. Oh man, it hurts reading this. My sister was married to a man from Spain, and she was a Jehovah's Witness also. That is cool. That is cool. That's all good. Now, the thing is, does she consider herself Latina now that she's married to a Hispanic person or a Spanish person? Or did she consider herself Hispanic? How about their kids? They have kids? What do they identify themselves as? Right? because that's the problem my kids have. My wife's from Chile, South America. I'm Canadian Basque from Europe. What are they considered? Right? Not to add more stress to today's generation. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Hispanic is very Eurocentric. It is if you want it to be, and it denies our indigenous heritage. Matthew R. Frejo wrote in this 2004 coming of age book, The Transcendent Journey. The Aztecs had a society far more advanced than anything in Europe at the time. Look at the word. The word has the root panic in it. Are you fucking kidding me? But whose panic? His panic? The white man's panic? Wow. And that's true. The Aztecs were far advanced. 100%. 100%. No, black. Yeah. Which is fine. Wow. Sandra Cineros, a notable author who identified with the term Chicana, a Mexican living in the U.S., was quoted in a 1992 New York Times piece about why she never used the word Hispanic. To say Latino is to say you come to my culture in a manner of respect. To say Hispanic means you are so colonized you don't even know for yourself, or someone who named you never bothered to ask you what you call yourself. All right. Another key problem with the term is one's geography. Hispanic refers to Spanish-speaking people, which excludes Portuguese-speaking Brazil, South America's largest country, but includes people from Spain, who I contend are actually European. Latino and Latina work around this by including people from all Latin countries. Though with a gendered subtext, that's why Latinx is more favorable and inclusive term. No, it's not favorable and inclusive term. It's a lazy fucking term. But alas, a lot of people, even public figures, still can't figure out what to call us. During a presidential debate in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, the candidate Donald Trump kept listing the two terms side by side, saying Latinos, Hispanics multiple times. His use of the word Hispanic really triggered all those negative feelings I had about being categorized as such in the first place. Well, people use Hispanic in the future. Well, fuck do I know if they're going to use it in the future, because reading all these articles just makes me even doubt more what the hell the world is coming to. Hispanic appears to be receding from usage. According to Google Book data, the usage in print rose through the 20th century and peaked in the 1990s before a steady drop-off began. People have started to use more specific ways to identify themselves, including Chicanx, my God, Boricua for Puerto Ricans, Americans, or use a hyphen to attribute their family's country or origin. Hispanic, it should be known, isn't really used outside of the United States, or may have a different meaning in other places. And that's what I said. It depends where you use these labels, might strike a chord, like it does so for this woman, about being called Hispanic because of her Aztec background, indigenous background, which I completely understand. But that's what it comes for, having conversation and understanding, right? But I think about these work groups that come together and the backlash they must have gotten. Hispanic, it should be known, isn't really used outside the United States, or may have different meaning other places. People from Colombia, El Salvador, Peru, or any other Latin country don't really refer to themselves as Hispanic. So it's important to question the structures in which the government uses Hispanic, not only in official forms, but during Hispanic Heritage Month too. And I agree. You know what? Thinking back, Hispanic Heritage Month I can see how that can rub people the wrong way. It drives me crazy when I see a poster for Hispanic Heritage Month and I see a flamenco dancer. Okay, Pierce says he refers to this month-long celebration as a band-aid. What type of heritage are you privileging? Without having these nuanced and difficult conversations, we're going to keep marginalizing people. Hispanic Heritage Month has a potential of being something really good and positive, but it also has the same potential of marginalizing and repeating the same stereotypes it was meant to point out. Well, it's a flamenco dancer. I'm like, that public relations person that was in charge of that, if they didn't put any other type of dancers or anything like that on that poster, then yeah, I can see why they're pissed. Well, it took me a while to warm up to Latinx. Nope, never going to warm up to that. As an identifier, it feels more authentic because the word we came up with and its use is clearly growing. By who? Millennials? That's what I want to know. He's back, Eli Huhu, de California, en directo, en vivo. My mom and sister hated Black History Month because it's so short. You know what? I hate Black History Month. I hate any type of month given to any race, to be honest with you. It should be part of history in general and taught in schools, not just give a month, which I've been in school and there's not much covered. It's very vague. Even here in Canada, spoke about the Underground Railroad, slavery. But I kind of take Morgan Freeman's point of view when it comes to this, where, like he said in that interview to that reporter who was Jewish, he goes, is there a Jewish History Month? And he said, no. Would you like to have one? And he said, no. And Morgan Freeman said, well, me neither. Black history is American history, and that's what it should be included. And that's just my opinion. And the same thing goes with this Hispanic Heritage Month. Governments and institutions are bending over backwards in order to create inclusivity, to include everyone. And by doing this, they're offending people. Heritage is maintained at home. It's a community's responsibility to make sure that the next generation you are raising knows about where the parents come from. Native communities have done this for centuries. And that's my beef. If Native communities can keep tradition going through storytelling, through songs, through cultural things, it's our responsibility as Spanish speaking, from whatever country you are, to teach your children where you came from, where your parents came from, and make sure they know that their background is rich and should be spoken about and should be taught. I've kind of failed. I'm being completely honest. My wife and I at home, we speak Spanglish a lot. So my daughters didn't really, pick up Spanish right away. My younger one speaks it, my older one speaks it that well, but she has a very, if I would say, gringa accent. She has a thick accent, but I don't care about that because as long as she says it, she says it. Now she's got the Spanish northern cursing down packed, my eldest. That's for sure. Mark Hugo Lopez, director of Hispanic research at the Pew, told NBC News last year that Latinx is a very unique American take on identity. I wonder who they spoke to about that. He adds that there's talks of incorporating the word into their surveys, but they haven't as of yet. Latinx fits within our border history. Again, border history division in the U.S. of using various terms to describe our identity. Lopez said, it's a pathetic like Hispanic, and political, in a sense, like a Chicano. As a Mexican American who's been wrongfully pigeonholed my entire life, I'm amazed and proud to be part of a Latinx community that's reclaiming its heritage. Okay. Reclaiming his heritage. Who's taking away your heritage? Right? That's what I want to know. Who's taking away his heritage? Is it the government's job to make sure your heritage is preserved? No, it's not. It's your fucking job. My father is Caribbean. Family was born in Puerto Rico. Nice, compa. Nice. Yeah, exactly. Funny ass shit. Now, who is Hispanic? Debates over who is Hispanic and who is not have often fueled conversations about identity among Americans who they trace their heritage to the Latin America or Spain. Most recently, the 2020 census has drawn attention to some of the many layers of Hispanic identity, providing fresh details how Hispanics view their racial identity. So, who is considered Hispanic in the United States? And how are they counted in public opinion surveys, voter exit polls, and government surveys such as the 2020 census? The most common approach to answering these questions is straightforward. Who is Hispanic? Anyone who says they are, and nobody who says they aren't. Wow. That's crazy. The Hispanic people and culture are finally being represented more in movies. 100% they are. But see, that's another thing, right? A lot of us are talking about tokenism. You know, when they change race in order to have a Hispanic play in a certain role, just to have a Hispanic person there. I'm not down with that. You know, create characters, right? That's the whole thing. Create characters. I remember reading, Marvel Comics when we had the Tarantula, right? He was an Hispanic, a villain, but whatever. It was a character. Just recently, I was exposed to the Blue Beetle. I had no idea who he was until I heard that they were making a movie of this guy, and they casted the guy from of Cobra Kai. But I first saw the character in Injustice 2, which I streamed a couple of weeks ago. Looks pretty cool. I don't know. I don't know how, if it's movie material or TV series. I think they would have done better with TV series, but that's just my opinion. 2020 census in California, Caucasians is now a minority. Absolutely. And that's the thing, United States, man. Spanish is your second language. But that is something that you guys will never have. Identify Spanish as a second official language of the United States. Vibe on CW Flash is Hispanic. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Lighthoo. I didn't know about that. Like I said, I'm not a big DC guy. I'm just getting into it now. I've often wondered if I was mixed because people in this family really get along with Hispanics. No, man, it's not a question. Maybe you are, but it's not a question of being mixed. It's a question about respecting other people's backgrounds and treating them as human beings, right? That's what it comes down to. And that's what I loved about where I grew up, because it made me, and I know a lot of people don't like when I say I don't see color. I mean, yeah, I see brown, black, and stuff, but I don't see that. I just see people that come to a country who are working in order to make a living in a new country that, can give them opportunities. My parents, when they first got here, they wanted to leave because they arrived in Montreal in November. It was like 3.5 feet of snow. They never saw so much snow, but they saw that, in Canada, we have two official languages, English and French. Both my parents said, wow, he can learn English and French plus Spanish. That's 3 languages right there. And that's exactly what happened. And I picked up other ones along the way, which is awesome. So Pew Research Center used this approach, and the U.S. Census Bureau largely does so too, as do most other research organizers conduct public opinion surveys by this way of counting the Census Bureau alternates. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to read all this because I'm already like beat this with a bat already. So, but I like this part here. Here's a quick premiere on the Census Bureau's approach of using self-identification to decide who is Hispanic. I like this. Read this. I immigrated to Phoenix from Mexico. Am I Hispanics? You are if you say so. My parents moved to New York from Puerto Rico. Am I Hispanic? You are if you say so. My parents were born in Spain, but I grew up in California. Am I Hispanics? You are if you say so. I was born in Maryland and married an immigrant from El Salvador. Am I Hispanic? You are if you say so. That is insane. Crazy. Crazy. All these words and all these things, all they do is just create division. Pure division. It's Commander Data got. I often wondered if I was. Oh, yeah, I already talked that. So, yeah, man. Myself, I have to say, my wife is Chilean. Does she consider herself Latina? I never asked her, really. I consider myself Canadian Basque descendant. Hence, I came up with my channel, the Basco scenario. I'm Basque, and I come up with different scenarios. And all I have to say is, man, everybody who speaks Spanish, who speaks Portuguese, for me, I consider them Latino because I'm taking it as a derivation of the Latin language. All these languages come from Latin. Spanish, Portuguese, Catalan, French, Italian. They're all Latin languages. Therefore, for me, in my opinion, we're all Latino. But whichever term you label yourself as, I'll respect that because that's the way I am. If you want to be called Hispanic, it's Hispanic it is. But it's these governments that are putting these things in documentation that, to categorize people, I just find that wrong. What difference does it make what country you came from, what language you speak? Are we not all American? Can't we all get along? Hispanic don't mean you have brown skin and brown and exactly. But people, there's people that like Pierce, that article I read previously, Pierce was taking that and they were serious, and he was seriously insulted by the fact that he was called Hispanic because it took away, he felt it diluted his Aztec culture, indigenous roots, that it was just wiped out. And that's the thing, right? It's all about that whole colonization history of it, right? Which was brutal, which was absolutely brutal. The Spanish conquistadors and the Catholic Church, man, woof. That was it was crazy. Your family can be black, born in London, identified as British, like your family can be born in Puerto Rico. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's high-end officials that started all this. Latino Amerique, it was a French official. Then it was published. Then it was division, At one point, Mexicans weren't even considered Latino. They were considered North American because they're part of North America. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Crazy, man. Yeah, so saying that, if you want to be called Latino, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be called Hispanic, there's nothing wrong with that either. This whole Latinx whole thing, I think is just fucking laziness. But, I find that These census polls are finding out where you came from, where you immigrated for what? If you're an American citizen, you're an American citizen. It doesn't matter where you came from. Not at all. So I went on Twitter before and I just did a search, I just hit Latino. I just wanted to see what the hell would pop up. I was curious about it. And it was funny. So there are a few articles on this stuff, man. They got here. No BC. Let's see what I got here. Latinos when they hear someone saying Latinx. Sacrifice your local Latinxes to. That's funny. Habla con orgullo. Legado y regazo latinidad. That's right. Habla con orgullo. That's something that has to be done. Speak your language. Speak it at home. My kids, I try as much to stop speaking Spanglish and try to speak Spanish. I forget a lot. I'm guilty of that. Latino power only. BTS Latinos fuck. Okay. Stop using the stupid word. It's Latino. Hola, my Latinx friend. Shut the fuck up. Exactly. A word made by a government to include, which is just freaking wrong. It doesn't include, it divises. Bank of America. Let's get here. As a Latino, I want to acknowledge this month of celebration and awareness. I'm first generation American and thankful to my parents made the sacrifices they made. Absolutely. That's what it's about. Acknowledgement. You acknowledge. You don't need a freaking month to do this. That's my beef. Why? It's just insane. Whoa, Latino baby. That's for the ladies. Oh, look at that. I made the cut with my stream. Awesome. Oh, what's this? Nice. Check this out. Texas GOP lawmakers propose redistricting map protecting congressional incumbents, but avoiding a new Latino majority seat. Oh, I gotta dip into this. This is interesting. This is really interesting. Oh my God. All right. Republicans in Texas opened their congressional redistricting effort with proposal that aims to insulate GOP incumbents from the state's rapidly diversifying electorate while diminishing the voting power of Latinos and Blacks in the states. Woo. Okay. I am not from there, but I don't know, man, that's crazy. Lawmakers in the GOP control the state Senate responsible for drawing the lines created a new solidly Democratic district in Austin, but did not draw a new Latino majority district, despite Latino population growth being the primary factor in Texas, acquiring two new seats in Congress effective in next year's election. Wow. This is a kind of article that I would read on another stream. Wow. Oh, man. Funny they're not using Latinx in this article. Because they don't give a shit. For them, we're all the same. Yep. We are all the same. Texas has one of the biggest Hispanic populations out there. Yes, they do. But that's why we got ourselves guns now. Just in case they act up, we can put them back in line. I'm just fucking around, guys. I'm just messing around. So, thank you for my rant regarding Latino and Hispanics. Which one are you? The answer to that question is whichever one you feel comfortable with is the right that you should choose. Don't let anybody else, governments or anybody else, tell you. Whatever you feel comfortable and identifying with is what you do. Should there be months, Hispanic months and things like this, in order for you to preserve culture? No, that's your responsibility to do that. If you don't, then that's where you're wrong. Like here in Quebec, you have this government here. They enforce laws of languages and stuff like that. Immigrants that come into Quebec, they're not allowed to send their kids to English schools. They have to go to French schools because the official language in this province is French. Now, am I totally against this? Not really. I understand. But where I have a problem with them when they start restricting, imposing laws to businesses where they have to have everything forcefully in French, to the point where new businesses that want to come to our province, they don't want to spend that extra money and getting everything translated. So they go where? Well, they go to Toronto. And that's why Toronto's huge right now, because they don't have that legal thing and they have to adapt to the province. Is the Hispanic population in Canada huge? It is getting there. It is getting there. There is a big Hispanic population. Montreal is huge Hispanic community, Spanish speaking. Let me say this: there's a large Spanish speaking community in Montreal, even bigger in Toronto. Yeah, it is. It's like not so far from my house. There's a Chilean store where they sell Chilean food and pastries and stuff. And it's great. You know, you go downtown and there's multiple types of Caribbean style restaurants, you know, from Dominican Republic, Cuba, you name it, man. There's multiple. And that's the beauty of it, right? You can go down one street and taste a little bit of everywhere in the world. New York City is the same thing, for sure. Well, I hate the guy, Greg Abbott. Who's that? Is that the governor? Is that the governor of Texas? I don't know, man. I don't know that much about that American politics. I just saw that article and I was like, wow, they're strategically placing and drawing lines to prevent a majority Latino seats in Texas. Yeah, I don't think that would fly there. But yeah. So, like I said, treat each other with respect, no matter where you come from. There's only one race. That's the human race. And I think it's going to take a fucking alien invasion for us to all come together. Hopefully. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but, you know, we just have to open our eyes and respect each other. So with that being said, guys, I want to thank everybody that stopped in and watched, bounced in and out. I appreciate it. Please write your comments down below. Share the stream. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Usually my streams are not political, but this is something that, like I said, touches close to home. And yeah, everyone get respect unless you're Rodney Dangerfield. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Oh my God, that's funny. Roger Dangerfield. Fucking funny. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Be good to each other, and Basco out. And like I said, they say thank you in Basque, Kariasko, and goodbye is agur.
All right, guys, go. This one's for you. The beat is fire and I'm ready to go because it's time for the Basco scenario. Some people like flair, some people like flash, but if it ain't hot, some people call it trash. I call him vanilla chocolate. He just like money fits well in my pocket. Watch it now, or watch it later. His name so fly, it means liberator. Sit back, relax, and watch the show. Gasco, get ready, man. It's time to go. Peace. Basco scenario coming to you each and every week. Peace.
Is there any stuff?